Hey, what's going on, everybody? Dave Locker with Chopper back again, week 3, and a wild week last week, to say the least. Sean McVay kicking that field goal. Listen, there's no doubt about it. People talking about like, oh, we got to put new rules in, or like this shouldn't be allowed. None of that's ridiculous. It sucks. It happened, but the fact that he kicked the field goal as time expired is one of the weirdest conclusions to a game we've seen in a while. And then we had Monday Night Football, which got even weirder. But seeing as well that this Cleveland offense could be pretty bad. We've got a lot to talk about today. No bye weeks quite yet going into week 3. So we got 16 games to hit on, and we're going to go through all of them. Now, look, pick our spots, right? Tail me, fade me. I won't take offense to it if you hate all of these picks, but I'm going to give you all the information I can on them. You can make your decisions, and I'll give you my picks along the way. But let's pick our spots. We don't need to hit every one of these games to pretend that we love them, because we're not going to like a lot of them. So we'll zero in on some we like. We'll have picks for everything, but we're going to really try and pick spots that we find the best for week 3, because we got 16 to choose from. So, hey, hit that thumbs up if you appreciate this content and you want to see more of it, depending on how we do, of course. Subscribe to the channel. Help us on that climb to 100K subs. And follow me on VX at Loughy_D, LOUGHY_D. Let's get into it. All right, first up, we got Thursday Night Football, baby. Giants getting 10 against the 49ers. One thing you should know about this video, there are certain spots that we're going to be targeting that are only on specific sports books, because you can get away from that hook on maybe a 6.5 to a 6, or a total that looks a whole lot better, or a money line that we'll get to that looks better in all of those spots. I put links to all of those books in the description and chat to take advantage of those promos. BetMGM just brought back bet $10, get $200 in bonus bets. FanDuel right now has bet 5, get 150 or 200. One of those you'll see in bonus bets. It's in the description. DraftKings, bet 5, get 200. PointsBet has a massive promo as well. So I'm going to have certain spots on certain books. Be on as many as possible. Collect your free money. Think of it this way. You guys are going to spend this money betting regardless. If you're going to do it, make sure you're getting as much free money as you can in return. So I threw links to all of them in the description. You'll see why later that we want to be on as many books, shop the odds, and get the free money that we can. So click those. Takes a second to sign up, get your bets down, and get that free money. And let's talk Thursday Night Football. So we've got the Giants at plus 10, 44.5 point total, 10.5 in some spots, of course. They had a huge come from behind victory against Arizona on Sunday. Still didn't cover, unfortunately, but now they have to play in San Francisco on short rest, arguably against the best team in football. They allowed 28 points to the Arizona Cardinals. Let's not overlook that either, right? They got smoked 40-0 at home in week 1. Herein lies the problem with the Giants. They can't protect Daniel Jones. He's been sacked 10 times in 2 games. Okay, 3 of those were against the Cardinals. He's been pressured on 48% of dropbacks too, and they did a good job in the second half of protecting him against the Cardinals. They didn't allow a lot of pressure, but that's the Cardinals, right? He has no touchdowns, 2 interceptions on a 52% completion rating under pressure so far this season. And now you're without Saquon Barkley. Well, Brian Daboll's playing these close to the vest and saying he's not out yet, but I just don't see any way that he's going to play. It seems like he's just playing mind games with this Niners team, maybe get him to plan differently, but I doubt they're buying into it. Now, look, take the PFF grades for whatever they're worth, but the Niners after 2 weeks ranked number 1 in pass rush. And yes, like I said, Giants offensive line looked better in week 2 in the second half, didn't allow a ton of pressure, but the Niners are not the Cardinals. I generally hate laying this many points, and let me know in the comments what your favorite bets are for this week. Some people are putting in a comment for every single game. You don't need to do that. You can put it all in one comment. But anyway, let me know what your thoughts are on this game and everything else. I just don't see that until the Giants can improve this pass rush. I can't back them. And having Matt Breida, Gary Brightwell, Eric Gray in the backfield doesn't help either. I would lay the 10 on the Niners here, but I have a 3-team teaser that I'm going to get to later in this video with some favorites. Highly suggest you stick around for that, because we got all this down to minus 120, and it's a spot I really, really like. Broncos 6-point dogs against the Dolphins, 47.5 point total for this one. You can't bet on the Broncos to cover under a touchdown right now. Like, they shockingly put up a ton of points last game and still lost. It's a broken team. I don't know what to do with them. I'm not sure they know what to do with them. Outside of, say, outside of saying bet the Dolphins to win by a touchdown, that's all I can really do with the Broncos. And I can understand why you might not want to, lay 6.5 points on the Dolphins against what we think should still be a good Denver defense. I mean, they got smoked by the Commanders last week. And you have Jalen Waddle questionable with a concussion. It's a big deal. We'll pay attention to Teron Armstead. I think he plays, though. I think Jalen Phillips is going to play. I think Waddle plays. Armstead and Phillips last week said that they both wanted to play. And apparently they were upset that they weren't allowed to play, but the Dolphins were being cautious with them. Kind of ironic coming from a team that that threw Tua Tagovailoa out there multiple times, practically dead. But maybe they learned from their mistakes. And last week, Wilson threw for 300-plus yards for the first time since, ready for this, week 1 of 2022. But 50 of those yards came on a desperate Hail Mary that just so happened to be a touchdown. So take that for what it's worth. I do believe in this Dolphins team, though, especially if Waddle's out there and Armstead and Phillips. That makes a difference. I think they're legitimately good. So as long as they're healthy, I think they can win this game by a touchdown at home. The Broncos seem broken right now. Make sure to grab this on DraftKings, though. There's no hook on the 6 points. Like I said, if you're not on DraftKings, take the bonus money. Link in the description there and for all of the books. But 6 points, there's no hook. If they win by 6, you push. If they win by 6 and you took minus 6.5 on whatever book you're at, you lose. Make the smart calls here. Bills minus 6.5 against the Commanders, 44.5 point total. Guys, I kind of like the Commanders here at home, plus 6.5 points. I'd love to get them at 7. If you can find the 7 somewhere, I would hit it. But we backed the Bills last week after everybody was down on them following that week 1 loss to the Jets. Then they crushed the Raiders. Not a surprise. The Raiders stink, guys. They're not that good. And they just beat, an arguably even worse Broncos team. But this looks like one of those games that could be more competitive than it seems on paper. If you disagree, again, let me know, because I wouldn't be shocked if people think the Bills are going to smoke the Commanders here. The gut usually tells you that as well. Washington has a good pass rush, though. They can force Josh Allen into some bad decisions to keep things close, like we saw in that Jets game in week 1. It's in Washington. They're at home. We saw this offense really function well against the Broncos last week. Should be a good defense, but we don't know at this point. It's only a 1-week sample, but I'm certainly not saying I think that Sam Howell's going to outduel Josh Allen all game, but Washington's a pretty sound team in the trenches as well on both sides of the ball, and that matters to me, especially with Chase Young back, and he looked really good against the Broncos. A lot of pressures, 1.5 sacks. That was his first game back. Dude looked good. So I may sprinkle a little bit on the Commanders money line at plus 240. I wouldn't expect you guys to be so crazy, but if I'm going for a pick on either side here, I would take the points plus 6.5 at home for Washington. Texans are getting plus 9.5 against the Jags, 43.5 point total. You guys may want to skip over this because I liked Houston last week and we saw how that turned out. How nuts am I to think that Houston might actually, over the season, put things together to the point where they just aren't embarrassingly bad? I know, I get it. Call me whatever you want in the comments. That's why they're there. I get it. But you know what? Everyone was calling me that last week for saying that the Steelers, and a bunch of other games. So, like the Lions are going to crush them. It's football. Weird stuff happens. Sometimes we're right, sometimes we're wrong. But the like CJ Stroud, he has lost a fumble in each game, but he hasn't been picked off. He threw for well over 300 yards. He has a legitimate rapport with Nico Collins. Tank Dell looked good. Robert Woods doesn't look bad. They need to get the run game going, but in a divisional game, granted last week that wasn't the case, but can they cover 9.5? I'd love it at 10. If you can find the 10. That's why, like I said, be on as many books as possible. Listen, this is by far not one of my favorite spots. I don't even know if I bet this myself. Probably not. But if I'm leaning on either side, I think 9.5 points. I think that the Texans have at least shown us a little bit of life here. I'm going to lean Texans plus 9.5. I'm kind of rooting for these guys lately. Might end poorly. Plus 9.5 Texans. Let's move on to the next game so we can forget I ever said that. All right, so Colts and Ravens. We have 16 games to choose from this week. I think we pump the brakes on this one for now and we kind of wait. Anthony Richardson suffered a concussion on Sunday, looked dominant early against the Texans. Dominant. 2 quick touchdowns, rushing touchdowns. Then he got hurt. Like I said, I was on the wrong side of this one. He isn't practicing today. I record this on Wednesday so we can try and get some good closing line value and take advantage of spots where we think we have good reads early in the week. So who knows, if you're watching this Thursday or Friday or Saturday or Sunday, there's still going to be a lot of value for you, but certain lines may have moved in our favor, maybe against us. We'll see. Just make sure you're paying attention to injury news. If Richardson can't play, it'll be Gardner Minshew under center. He looked great against the Texans in relief effort, but let's be completely honest. Gardner Minshew's not a great quarterback. We saw last year with the Eagles. He came in against Dallas with Hurts out and, man, put up like 30-plus points, then was terrible the very next game. I think there's probably somewhere in the middle of where Gardner Minshew is at, but that great performance last week is not something that we should expect every week going forward, especially not against this Ravens. Let's not forget, Ravens defense versus Houston defense. Pretty dramatic difference there. He looked good there. I expect that to be the case if he plays this week, but it might be Richardson. Richardson might be good to go. I would suspect, a fourth overall pick, I think it was, rookie, that they would be cautious with him, especially after what we've seen with concussions from other quarterbacks in recent years. But we don't have any word on that yet. And there's also question marks on the Ravens side, the offensive line, the defensive injuries. If you wanted me to lean somewhere now, there's games at 7.5 and 8 points in some spots. I would go Colts +8, but really at one of those spots that I think we should just wait until we have more news and key in on some other great games. Like this next one. I do like this next game. Falcons are getting 3 points. If you like the Falcons, you can get them at 3.5. But Lions are -3 on BetMGM and PointsBet. If you're not on BetMGM, like I said, it's $10 into $200. Just bet the Lions and get your $200 in bonus bets. You got to be 21 years or older to gamble, too. I forgot to mention that. If you have a gambling problem or someone you know does, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. But check this out, right? We backed the Falcons last week. We backed them in actually back-to-back games to start the season. The spread in week 1 against Carolina, and then the money line in week 2. We won both of those. But I think this might be where I'm jumping off, at least for now. You can still get the Lions at -3. Like I said, BetMGM, PointsBet has 3.2. Everywhere else is 3.5. And that's where I'll be looking. Bijan Robinson's been awesome. 6.5 yards per attempt last week. Great stuff. They have a legitimate two-headed monster between him and Algier, who probably gets phased out a little bit as the season goes on, assuming Robinson keeps looking great. But I'm not buying into Desmond Ridder. I know he was fine last week. Looked good. Drake London had a decent enough game. But if the Lions offense continues to produce, and I think they will, they have a great offensive line, a really good offensive line, right? Run blocking and pass blocking. I think Arthur Smith and his offense are going to have a tough time winning this game with the heaviest run-first approach in football. I like the improvements they've made on defense for sure. This line opened at 5.5. And at that point, I would have been willing to look at this Falcons team for sure. Hope, they just try and slow the pace, run the football, keep it out of Jared Goff and company's hands. I get it. But now that it's down to 3 in some spots, I'll take the Lions at home, and that'll be my spot. They lost C.J. Gardner-Johnson to the IR with a pec injury. They'll likely be without David Montgomery, but they have a more than capable rookie back in Jahmyr Gibbs, who's a great pass catcher. And we already know that this guy can shed tackles really well early in his career. But Ridder isn't think of it this way. Ridder is not the biggest concern for the Falcons offense. It's the fact that you're talking about a team that if they can't run the ball as well, or if they go behind early, are they going to be able to keep this game close? The only concern now I have for Detroit, pay attention to this, guys, is that Amon-Ra St. Brown has that turf toe injury. He said he's not going to miss any time, but these injuries can linger. I assume, they hit him with something before the game and he's good to go, assuming he's playing. He's not expected to miss any time. So this line's come down enough for me if you can still get it at 3, where I'd hit it. At 3.5, it's fine, but 3 is where I'm really looking. Patriots, -2.5 against the Jets, 36.5 point total. Dear God, how far we've fallen. Patriots haven't played bad football through the first 2 weeks, but they come into this matchup 0-2 against the Jets. Hell, the Jets are 1-1, beat Buffalo without Aaron Rodgers. But you know what? You faced the Eagles and you faced the Dolphins to kick off the year. That's no easy task at all. And they stayed competitive in both of those games. Sunday's matchup for Mac Jones, not going to get much easier against the Jets defense, but They should avoid having to throw the ball 70% of the time, which they've had to do through the first 2 weeks. You have Zach Wilson on the other side leading the Jets offense. Do we really expect somebody like Wilson to maintain a steady offense and put points on the board early and force New England to throw? I would say no. I think it's real tough to think that they're going to be playing from behind. Wilson was putrid against Dallas, throwing 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions, completed 44% of passes on 27 attempts. I mean, so bad. They got to get somebody else at this point. And the Patriots held Tua Tagovailoa under 250 yards in week 2, and that was without Jonathan Jones, who should play this week. They smothered a good Eagles offense too to open the season. I think Mac Jones and company will just don't make any critical mistakes in order to win this game. Lean on the defense to come up with some big plays and some big turnovers, which we absolutely know they can do. Get some pressure on Mac Jones like Dallas did, even if it's not as much, and you can get the win. So I'm going to go Patriots money line, and here's why. It's minus 160 on PointsBet. It's minus 148 on FanDuel, minus 150 on BetMGM. It's minus 135 on DraftKings right now. Think about the value you're getting by knocking all of that juice off of this. From 150 or 160 to 135 on the money line, I absolutely love the value that you're getting. If you, like myself, thinks the Patriots eke out a win here, minus 135 compared to those other numbers is massive. That's what I'll be looking at. Patriots money line, minus 135 on DraftKings. That is the spot. Saints getting 2 points against the Packers, 42-point total at Lambeau. This is really another one of those games I think we'd be wise to wait on. I'll give you a lean here, though. But Aaron Jones and Christian Watson missed last week in a 1-point loss to Atlanta. Good. We wanted that Atlanta money line win at plus 106. We got good value on that. It closed at minus 120. And you know the reason why? Because when you jump on it, when you suspect, hey, Jones and Watson and these guys are going to be out, let me hit this early. These are my assumptions. That sometimes will work for you. Other times it won't. In this case, it did. And good thing we hit the money line instead of, minus 2.5 where it closed at. That's why getting in early usually in the long run benefits us. But we'll see what happens with Jones and Watson this week. Jones wasn't practicing. Wouldn't be surprised if he misses this week. Watson was doing some individual stuff. So we'll see if he makes his debut in week 3. And it's funny because it was kind of a mismatch anyway for Green Bay. For their defense, they're much better at stopping the pass than they are the run. Bijan Robinson, like we mentioned earlier, just ate them alive. They could also be down 2 top offensive linemen in David Bakhtiari and Elgin Jenkins. That's not great. If Green Bay's missing both of them, and Bakhtiari again and Jenkins in this game, he's actually already out, I believe. The Saints are probably going to be down Jamal Williams, though, which means they're going to be leaning on Tony Jones Jr. And assuming Kendre Miller plays, I think he will. He's a rookie. He could be good, but he's a rookie. Still no Alvin Kamara. Just knowing what we know right now, which isn't much, I would lean Saints +2 on the road. But I'm not touching this game until we know a little bit more. And like I said, usually we want to bet games early when we have a good read on injuries and possible line movement like we did last week. But with the Atlanta game, but I don't feel like there's a strong read here in either direction. And I'm not sure which way the wind's blowing in this game. So I'd lean Saints +2 right now. But let's move on to Titans and Browns because I do like this spot. 39.5-point total. Titans are getting 3 on the road. I really don't like the Browns right now. I really don't like this Browns offense, right? And I said it to you guys last time we did the video. I mentioned it on the Monday Night Football video as well. If they have to lean on Deshaun Watson to win games all season, it's going to be a long year. And that 280 million guaranteed or whatever it was, it's going to look really bad. The Titans are a true pass funnel defense. They really are. I mean, they've allowed under 70 rushing yards in back-to-back games to start the season. If you wanted to make the argument that it was Jamal Williams in week 1 and Joshua Kelly in week 2, I get that. But they absolutely suffocated the run in both games, for sure. And you saw them get the win against the Chargers in overtime. They did just enough. And Ryan Tannehill led them downfield for a field goal, a 27-24 win. They're allowing 2.7 yards per attempt on 48 carries so far. Teams have tried to run, averaging almost 25 runs per game against them because Tennessee doesn't have a great offense. But tell me the absence of Nick Chubb doesn't loom large here after that brutal injury. I don't think Jerome Ford and Kareem Hunt are the answer for this game, even though Ford looked good in week 2. You want to talk about, they were backups. Yeah, so was Jerome Ford. All right. And, Watson doesn't seem nearly as mobile as he once was. He's not comfortable in the pocket. Hell, we saw multiple face mask penalties because he couldn't get away from the rushing defenders. If the Titans cover this spread or win this game outright, which I think is entirely possible, if you're of the same mindset as I am for this game, find the best money line for this one. Find the best odds. You might be really surprised at what type of money line odds you find for Tennessee. I'll tell you right now. I'll go to our website, oddshopper.com, and see if we can find where the money line is for this. I would assume like plus 142 on FanDuel right now. There's going to be some good spots though, for sure. Oddshopper.com. All of these odds and everything are free. And if you want to get the best plus EV odds for everything else, it's 70% off your first month. So oddshopper.com, link in the description for that. Awesome, awesome site. And we just keep innovating and adding to that. But I don't mind the money line. I would take the 3 points because you're getting it at 3. I just think if they cover or they win outright, it's going to be entirely because the defense and because of Watson and Ryan Tannehill and Derrick Henry just need to do enough. So, guys, I'm going to fade Cleveland until Watson shows some life, and maybe he will. But he didn't last year, and he hasn't this year. And I'm not talking about that burner account that, I'll tell you what, it really seems like that's his burner account. If you haven't seen it yet, that seems like what? Look, I don't want to make any accusations. Innocent until proven guilty in this wonderful country. But I don't think many Browns fans are out there straight ride or die for Deshaun Watson like this Gainesville Zone account was. Spelled Gainesville wrong as well. You guys tell me. You tell me in the comments where you lean on this. But who was it? Jacob, was it Colangelo, right? He was the one with the burner account for Philly?
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, this may not be that bad, but it looks like Watson for sure. Or maybe another KD spot where he forgets to change out of his own. I'll fade him. I'll fade this team and go Tennessee until we see something out of Deshaun Watson. Plus, I think the Titans defense is actually pretty good. And if he has to pass, I don't like it. Chargers +1 at the Vikings, 54.5 point total. Weird lines here. I'm seeing there's actually a few Chargers -1 out there. Okay. There's some Vikings -2 out there. So be careful about this one where you're grabbing the line. Make sure to get the best that you can, no matter what side you're on. I think this is one of those games where it's tough to get a read, but it's a fascinating game. It's a 54.5 point total. And here's the problem with the Chargers, okay? Chargers fans, I mean no offense to you at all, I promise. And you know what? Most of you would agree with me if you're honest with yourselves. They always find a way to lose these close games, these one-possession games. They're 0-2 with a 2-point home loss to Miami and an overtime loss to Tennessee. And you just look at it and you go, yeah, that's the Chargers, isn't it? I mean, they always play close games and they always find a way to lose them. It's unfortunate, but it's true. The Vikings aren't totally different, to be fair, but they're 0-2 in a must-win home game. And it's crazy to think that 9 of the 9 teams now that have gone without a win that are 0-2, 3 of them are the Vikings, Chargers, and the Bengals. But I digress. This game has a monster 54.5 point total. Some spots with a 1-point spread. You can't find a more evenly matched spot than this. 2 desperate teams to win right now, right? And it looks like Austin Eckler could be sidelined again. I don't think he plays. Could be wrong, but I don't think he plays. And while usually we don't place too much emphasis on running backs, he's kind of a big deal, especially against the Vikings team that was just gutted by DeAndre Swift in the Eagles run game last week. Although, to be fair, Eagles have probably the best offensive line in football. And by design, the Vikings and Brian Flores were trying to take away the long ball, the deep ball, which didn't exactly work. Devontae Smith had a long touchdown. But in doing so, they just got carved up, eaten alive in the run game by Swift and company. So you look at this and you go, hey, both teams are still loaded with offensive weapons. Neither of them have been awake on defense up until this point. Some tough matchups like Miami for the Chargers, Philly for the Vikings. Week 1 was Tampa, so whatever. But I'm going to take the Vikings here. This is just a straight lean because this is basically a pick 'em. Judging by the books, don't even have consensus on this because I think falling 0-3 at home is a tough spot to be in. But also, I just don't have faith in the Chargers to win a close game right now. That's all it is. I don't have faith in Brandon Staley to make the right calls. So no real strong take, but you guys tell me, do you look at this and go, I really like this, or I really like this? Or do you go, there's this one small factor. Maybe it's Eckler. Maybe it's Brandon Staley, and the Chargers been notorious for losing close games. And that's kind of where I fall on this one at Vikings -1. Panthers, 5.5-point dogs at Seattle, 42-point total. Last week is why we don't react to a 1-week sample, my friends. The look-ahead line for Seattle-Detroit before week 1 was -3 before the season started. And at one point moved to Lions -5.5, which is where we got it. Seattle ended up, you could have taken Seattle at any spot and you would have been good. They got an overtime win in a shootout, which has become a tradition for these teams. They seem to face each other every year. It's really odd. And shootout every year. But Geno Smith was fantastic. The defense, once again, got shelled, though. They coughed up 418 yards and 426 yards through the first 2 weeks. 31 and 30 points allowed, respectively. Not great. Might actually be a spot where Bryce Young can get something going, even if it's not enough to win. He didn't practice today. I assume it's maintenance, but, stay tuned for that if you're watching later in the week. It's not my favorite game. I'd lean Seahawks -5.5 and over 42 here, because I do have some respect for this Panthers defense, but they haven't exactly faced a murderer's row of offenses yet, right? Like you have Atlanta, who just ran the ball. Ritter only threw 18 times. New Orleans, they have some weapons, but I don't have a ton of faith in that offense until they prove it against some good teams. I'd lean Seahawks -5.5 on FanDuel because it's 6 in other spots. So get that. That's a big deal. Get that 5.5 over the 6, which is, maybe not a 7 or a 3, but it's still a key number. And over 42 here until the Seahawks plug those gaps and holes on defense. You might actually see Bryce Young and the Carolina offense come alive, but not do enough to keep this close enough. Cowboys and Cardinals. All right. Cowboys 12-point favorites, 43.5-point total. The Cowboys look dominant through 2 weeks. We'll see what happens once they get to the playoffs, though. Sorry, Cowboys fans. I had to do it. But, am I wrong? They disgraced the Giants 40-0 at MetLife Stadium on primetime before shitting all over Zach Wilson-led Jets 30-10 the next week. Defense has been unstoppable. Offense is humming. And now they're traveling to the desert to take on a Cardinals team that is, you guys ready for this? They are 11-1 odds, plus 1,100 to go 0-17. Those are short odds to go 0-17. They're also plus 150 to be the last winless team in football after 2 weeks. And now Budda Baker's on the IR with a hamstring injury. Not good. I don't see how Joshua Dobbs finds success against this defense or how his line protects him. They've actually not been bad as far as protection goes through the first 2 weeks, but this pass rush is scary good. You have Micah Parsons coming at you. Things might look a little bit different than they have through the first 2 weeks of the season, right? I don't see how the Cardinals defense can slow down the Cowboys offense either. Whether they do it on the back of Tony Pollard, leads the league in red zone carries and goal line attempts, or CeeDee Lamb, or anybody else, even if Brandon Cooks doesn't play, I'd go Cowboys -12 here. It's a lot of points. I get it. We've taken some big dogs. This might be a spot where we take a big favorite. But in this next game, the next game is the final piece of our 3-team teaser. You ready for this? That's what we're going to do. We're going to go 3-team, 10-point teaser. And the Chiefs are going to be our final piece. 47.5-point total. They're 12.5-point favorites. They should beat the brakes off of Chicago, okay? I get it. I refuse to believe that this Chiefs offense is going to continue to be as flat as they've been through 2 weeks. I think we all agree on that. So does Vegas, for what it's worth. 30-point implied total would suggest the same thing. 12.5 points is a lot of points to lay. You could definitely see a backdoor cover somehow, like that ridiculous Rams game. There were a few backdoor covers. Carolina got the backdoor push. There were a couple last week, but my God, the Bears have been dreadful, just dreadful. Justin Fields has been pressured on 47% of dropbacks, sacked 10 times, and he's holding the ball way too long. This isn't just the offensive line. They just lost the starting offensive lineman too, maybe for the season. That happened today, right before I started this video. He also ran for only 3 yards in week 2. I mean, look, I don't know how much easier life is going to get for him in week 3. Chris Jones came back for Kansas City in week 2, did not skip a beat. Dude was purely dominant, tormented Trevor Lawrence all game, despite being on a pitch count too. 1.5 sacks, a ton of pressures, and the Bears' offensive line just stinks. It got even worse after today. Also, can we not overlook the fact that despite the Chiefs' struggles on offense, their defense held Jared Goff and Trevor Lawrence to 14, and because there was a Kadarius Toney touchdown for the Lions in Week 1, and 9 points respectively between Detroit and Jacksonville. Two good offenses. 12.5 points makes me a little uneasy. If I'm leaning like either side of the spread, there's no way I'm backing the Bears, so I'd go Chiefs minus 12.5. But I actually love this as a teaser piece with Dallas and San Francisco. So listen, if you were to go 3-team teaser, 10-point teaser, and I try and be careful with these teasers because everyone goes, man, I can't lose these teasers. I'm going to tease this 10-point dog to 20, and they're going to lose by 30. That's what happens all the time. But you're getting Dallas to -2, win by a field goal. You're getting the Chiefs to -2.5, win by a field goal. And you get the 49ers to 0 on Thursday Night Football, just win. If I'm ever doing a teaser, once in a while I'll throw them at you guys. 3-team, 10-point teaser gets us to -120. I kind of love it. All right, let's go to Steelers and Raiders here. The Steelers are 2.5-point dogs against the Raiders, 43.5-point total. They got us the money line win on Monday night. It wasn't pretty at all, though. And that offense just looks awful. The absence of Deontay Johnson didn't help. But Deshaun Watson does not look right either. I mentioned it earlier. That's why we were banking on the Steelers in that game, to not go 0-2 at home and back-to-back home games to start the season after that awful loss to the Steelers. Sure, we'll thank the football gods for that Nick Chubb injury, although I love that guy. I hate to see it happen. But to be fair, Jerome Ford was good in that game. It's not like he skipped a beat. Here's what I'm getting at, though. Neither the Steelers or the Raiders' offenses are good. However, I still think that the Raiders' offense is better than the Steelers right now for two very distinct reasons. Josh Jacobs is good. Rough start to the season, but he's good. And the Steelers have some injuries on defense. And also, Devontae Adams is just different. Like he's, of all the offensive players, and I thought George Pickens made some explosive plays, specifically that one, 70-yard touchdown. But Devontae Adams is by far the best offensive player on the field. I think the under 43.5 here looks pretty good. You can get that on DraftKings. It's 44 everywhere or 43 everywhere else. So you're getting that additional half point. We'll take whatever we can get. And if I'm leaning on either side, I'd go Raiders -2 because of Adams and Jacobs. I think over 4 quarters, even though that Steelers defense made some big plays, 2 defensive touchdowns against Watson, Jimmy Garoppolo, I think, will be able to just control the pace. All right. And not make huge mistakes like Watson did and just get the ball to Adams, get the ball to Josh Jacobs. So over 4 quarters, I think they wear him down enough. And Kenny Pickett and a Matt Canada-led offense at OC continue to struggle here. Monday Night Football doubleheader. Let's go, baby. Eagles -5, Bucks against the Bucks, 46-point total. A lot of injuries to talk about here. The Eagles played Thursday night, so pay attention, guys, because they played Thursday night. It was on a short week coming off that win against the Patriots. They were without James Bradbury, Reed Blankenship, and Kenny Gainwell. The Gainwell stuff is no big deal. I don't care about that. I wish Kenny Gainwell was relegated to a lesser role behind DeAndre Swift and RIP Rashad Penny, but I wish he was getting some work too. Gainwell's just uninspiring. But Swift was dominant, so who cares? The Bradbury and Blankenship news is big, though, because you just lost Avonte Maddox probably for the season. Nakobe Dean is on the IR. This team suffered a lot of injuries on defense. My guess is both of them play because they had extended rest coming off a Thursday night game. So it's not, they got 11 days rest or whatever it is. And now it's a Monday and not a Sunday game. But I also think this is one of those games where the defensive line makes the most impact for Philly and not the secondary. Here's what I mean. You smother the run game against, not a great run block. We know Tampa Bay is not a good run blocking team. That's why last year they threw the ball 70% of the time or whatever it was. And yeah, Rachaad White had a good game against Chicago, but throw that shit out the window. I think you can smother the run game, force Baker to throw, get pressure on him with that ferocious offense or defensive line, and make him make mistakes. That's kind of how I envision this. You guys let me know how you see it going. But the truth is that Hurts hasn't been great either. I don't have a ton of faith in it. He has looked average at best. He's been fine, but a far cry from what we saw in 2022. And they had a really easy schedule last year. And this Bucs defense is no joke either. I think they can make life difficult for Hurts. I really do. You can grab under 46 on BetMGM. That's where I'm doing it. Again, $10 in the 200. So collect your free money. And you can also get Eagles -5. That's where I'd lean. I like the under, I think, more than the spread here because it's a good Eagles defensive line. I think they're good. The only thing that would suck here is if we see like defensive touchdowns. That would suck because then the total goes up. But if it's just kind of like a war of attrition between both these teams and then the Eagles pull away late, I think you get under this like a 40 or a 24-17 game or something around those lines. I like under 46. I would lean Eagles -5 because I think that the trenches battle is where the biggest difference is going to be made in this game. So that's where I'm going here. And then we'll wrap it up with Rams and Bengals, 43.5 point total. Rams are 2-point dogs. Here's the thing, guys. We can't play this right now. You can if you want. But Joe Burrow re-aggravated his calf injury. Clearly wasn't 100% to start the season. He said he's feeling better after getting a couple of days rest, but that's not enough to ensure that he's going to play Monday, let alone play well if he's on the field. It took him 6 quarters of football this season to get anything going. I don't know, man. If Burrow was healthy coming into this game, I would probably lay up to a touchdown here. I really would. That's how confident I would be that they're not going to go 0-3 at home in this season. You know what I mean? But Jake Browning's their backup quarterback, and the offense has already been neutered by a hobbled Burrow under center. So maybe it wouldn't get worse. Probably can't get any worse than it's been, but I doubt they'd look any better either. I mean, I do a video every single Monday and Thursday morning for Monday and Thursday Night Football, specifically for primetime games. So we're going to revisit this one once we have more info. But knowing now that the Bengals actually dialed back their playbook to avoid re-injuring that calf for Burrow, getting him quick outs and all that stuff, I don't love that. Then he tweaked his calf at the end of week 2. Doesn't make me confident at all that we'll see him. And if we do see him, is he going to be any decent against the Rams, who have actually looked better than anticipated? Although that should have been a 10-point game against the Niners last week, but whatever. Gun to my head, I'd go Bengals here at -1.5, -2, depending on where you get it, because an 0-3 season, start to the season, is a death sentence, right? It's a statistical death sentence at this point. I'm not confident in it, but I think they'd find a way just to win, to claw out a win. Over the last 20 seasons, back to 2002, 99 teams have started 0-3. 99 teams have started 0-3. One of them, the 2018 Texans, has made the playoffs. So desperate game for the Bengals. We'll see what happens. I'll talk more about this on Monday. Appreciate you guys hanging out for a long haul video as always, but we got to knock 16 games out and we don't want to be lazy, right? So follow me over on the X, formerly known as Twitter, at Loughy_D, LOUGHY_D. Good luck, and we'll see you back here for the next one. Peace.